The council chamber of the Galactic Concord had never been silent before. Not in its 1,000 years of bureaucracy, not through the countless wars or the so-called peace edicts. But now, as the holographic vote tallies shimmered into the air, silence fell like a blade. 10,000 systems hung in balance. One world, a refugee world called Eritas 4, stood accused of harboring a pathogen that spread through thought itself, an artificial virus of ideology. It had made its victims question orders, reject obedience, dream of freedom. To the empires seated here, that was the most dangerous disease of all. Motion, Extermination Protocol Omega Red. The presiding chancellor, a crystalline being of living quartz, let the words echo through the hall. Voting begins. Light spheres pulsed across the great amphitheater. Thousands of species raised appendages, activated neural nodules, or projected energy strands. One by one, each symbolized a vote, either for destruction or mercy. The results came in like falling dominoes. Yes, 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 yes. Every empire voted to burn Eritas 4 to ash. Except one. The human delegation's orb remained dim. Inside their small podium chamber, Ambassador Elaine Cutter sat rigid, jaw clenched, staring at the glowing vote icon projected before her. Around her, aides whispered in panic. Madam Ambassador, all allies have voted yes. We can't stand alone on this. She didn't look at them. She was watching the projection of Eritas 4 on the central holotable, a planet of green oceans and silver-ringed skies. It wasn't a human world. Not even close. But it was alive. Her voice came low and steady. The charge is ideological infection, not biological threat. They think too freely, that's their crime. Her aide stammered. That's how the council defines contagion. If you don't align, you destabilize. She pressed her finger against the console. Vote registered, no. The chamber's silence cracked like ice. Every alien delegate turned toward the human section, hundreds of glowing eyes, tendrils, and lenses focusing on a single human woman standing against the entire galactic consensus. The presiding chancellor's crystalline body refracted harsh light as it spoke. Ambassador Cutter, your species' defiance is noted. Do you wish to justify this decision? Elaine stood, smoothing her uniform, dark navy with the silver earth insignia gleaming at the collar. She looked impossibly small under the towering hollow beings surrounding her. I don't need to justify compassion, she said quietly. You're about to sterilize a world because its people learned to ask questions. If that's justice, then your civilization's already dead. A low, multitonal hiss rippled through the chamber, disapproval from dozens of species. The Chancellor leaned forward, voice crystalline and cold. Ambassador Cutter of Earth, your moral performance is admirable but irrelevant. The Concord will proceed. Humanity will be noted as abstaining from collective defense treaties until further review. Then review this, Elaine said, her eyes narrowing. We'll open our skies. 10,000 of them, the ones you call infected, will have a home. Gasps, actual, audible gasps, filled the chamber. It was one thing to refuse extermination, another to offer sanctuary. The Chancellor's glow dimmed. You would risk contaminating your species? We'd risk being human, she answered. The holographic vote solidified. The decree of extermination passed with all but one vote. The armies of the Concord would burn Eritas 4 in 3 standard days. But that single no had already rewritten the galaxy's balance. Hours later, Elaine stood in her shuttle, watching the glow of the Council station fade into the void. Her comm crackled with an encrypted transmission from Earth Command. Ambassador Cutter, you are aware of what this means, a stern male voice said. Yes, she replied. You just made us a target. She smiled faintly. We were always a target. We just decided who we want aiming at us. Meanwhile, across the stars, word spread faster than any official communique could suppress it. 10,000 refugees, Scientists, dissidents, families, heard of a world that had said no. They fled in scavenged freighters, silent colony ships, and dark-coded shuttles. Many died en route, but the ones who survived carried one belief stronger than fear. Earth said no. Maybe they'll say yes to us. When the first refugee fleet dropped out of FTL above the solar system, the Terran defense array came online instantly. Thousands of orbital platforms locked on, ready to vaporize anything that breached protocol. But instead of weapons, the ships sent a simple broadcast. "We were told you said no." The message spread through Terran command channels like a heartbeat. General Kane, head of the Solar Defense Network, stood in the control spire, watching 1,000 flickering distress signals orbit the edge of Neptune's shadow. "Ambassador Cutter wasn't bluffing," he murmured. "They're really coming." "Orders, sir?" a lieutenant asked nervously. Kane watched the refugees' transmissions, recordings of burned worlds, of families hiding in shattered colonies. He closed his eyes. "Open a corridor," he said. The lieutenant blinked. "Sir." "You heard me. Let them in." Back in orbit, one of the refugee captains, a young Aridasian with translucent skin and golden eyes, wept as her ship entered Sol space. The sensors filled with static and light as the massive blue marble of Earth appeared before her. Green, alive, unburned. "Are they real?" she whispered. Her co-pilot nodded, voice trembling. "Real enough to bet everything on." And for the first time in galactic history, 10,000 aliens sailed under Earth's gravity well, not as invaders, but as guests. In the quiet of her quarters aboard the diplomatic shuttle, Elaine Cutter received the encrypted confirmation. Refugees arrived. All accounted for. Earth's skies open. She smiled softly and whispered to the empty room. "Let them call us infected. We'll cure the galaxy by example." Outside her viewport, Sol burned bright and defiant. And in that light, the seeds of something terrifying and beautiful began to grow. They came in waves, not soldiers but voices. Every Concord world sent transmissions, legal decrees, and veiled threats toward Sol. Some accused humanity of treason. Others begged them to reconsider. All of them agreed on one thing: no species disobeyed the Concord and survived it. From orbit above Earth, General Kane watched the tactical displays flicker with incoming warnings. Entire sectors were shifting resources. Concord ships were moving. The holoscreen glowed red across his control deck. Message repeat. Concord Directive 448. Containment of Terran sector pending decontamination. Kane exhaled slowly. The words were bureaucratic poetry for blockade. Beside him, his second-in-command, Lieutenant Chun, frowned. "They've surrounded the relay corridors. They mean to cut us off from every trade route." Kane's jaw tightened. "So the Council couldn't burn the refugees' planet, and now they'll try to starve ours." Down on Earth, Ambassador Elaine Cutter faced her own battle. She stood before the United Terran Assembly, a ring of senators, scientists, and AI envoys, while the live feed from orbit showed the refugee convoys in temporary docking rings around Luna and Mars. The assembly chamber buzzed with tension. "Madam Ambassador," a senator from Pacifica demanded, "you invited 10,000 non-human refugees into our system without collective approval. That is not protocol." Elaine met his glare evenly. "Neither is genocide. Should we have followed that protocol too?" Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Another delegate, an older woman from the African continental bloc, leaned forward. "Elaine, this isn't about morality. It's logistics. These refugees, their biology, their technology, we can't process this many safely." Elaine nodded. "Then we learn how. They've survived extinction to get here. We can survive learning compassion." In orbit, refugee ships floated like silent prayer lanterns. Their hulls were patched, cracked, some barely functional, vessels made from scavenged panels and hollowed freighters. Children peered from viewport glass, seeing oceans for the first time. They didn't understand the weapons trained on them. At the edge of the solar system, The quarantine line was drawn, a vast network of Terran defense drones and automated platforms surrounding the system's outer perimeter. Officially, it was containment monitoring. Unofficially, it was Earth saying, "We can take care of our own." 2 days after the refugees arrived, the first Concord envoy appeared. A silver and crystal dreadnought emerged from FTL just beyond Neptune's orbit, broadcasting on all channels. Its insignia glowed, the same faceted sigil that had presided over the extermination vote. "Attention Terran Command," the envoy's voice boomed, calm but cold. "By order of the Galactic Concord, you are in violation of Extermination Protocol Omega Red. Return the infected entities or prepare for quarantine enforcement." Kane's image appeared on the main viewer, his expression flat, unimpressed. Enforcement by whom? By the lawful authority of the Council. Kane raised an eyebrow. The same Council that voted to vaporize 10,000 civilians? "You'll forgive us if your authority doesn't impress me." The envoy tilted its crystal head, refracting light in disdain. "You misunderstand. This is not a threat. It is containment for your protection. You are too emotional to comprehend the risk." Kane gave a small smile, a dangerous one. "Emotion's exactly what you're afraid of, isn't it?" He leaned closer to the screen. "Here's our counteroffer. Turn your ship around, file a protest, and keep your fleet outside Sol. If you don't, your containment line becomes a debris field." For the first time, the envoy hesitated. "Are you declaring war, human?" Kane shook his head. "No. I'm declaring responsibility. You should try it sometime." Transmission ended. Hours later, Elaine received a secure feed from the command spire. "You told them what?" she asked, voice sharp. "That I don't like company at my borders," Kane said, unbothered. "Admiral." "General." "Fine. General. The Council won't just accept that. They'll retaliate." He gave a grim half-smile. "Let them. They think we're still the pre-fold species that begged for entry. They forgot why the Concord invited us in the first place." Elaine frowned. "Because of our engineering, our adaptability." Kane shook his head. "Because we survived our own extinction events without mercy. They study us like a contagion. They just never realized mercy was the mutation." On Luna, the refugees began to rebuild their lives in makeshift domes. Human volunteers worked side by side with Eridasians, helping install filtration systems and habitat controls. One young Eridasian boy, scales luminescent under lunar light, stared up at the stars and asked his human caretaker, "Why did you save us?" The man, a tired engineer with grease-stained hands, smiled faintly. "Because someone should've. Even if it's dangerous? Especially if it is." In orbit, Earth's AIs monitored everything: biosigns, transmissions, unknown energy spikes. Cassandra, the same synthetic intelligence that once guarded Sol's skies during the Vorth crisis decades ago, reactivated quietly from archival memory. Her voice filled the command deck, smooth and haunting. "General Kane, I detect 32 Concord vessels repositioning near the Helios fold." Kane didn't look away from the viewport. "Understood. Prepare contingency, Iron Veil. Non-lethal field." Cassandra paused. "You intend to blind them?" "Just long enough to make them think we're scarier than we are," he said. "Fear buys peace faster than treaties." Meanwhile, the refugees broadcast a message back to the galaxy, their first communication since escaping. "We are safe under Terran skies." They did not fear us. They offered food, air, and a chance to speak. Maybe infection is another word for hope. The Concord tried to suppress it. Failed. Within hours, the message spread to every border system, igniting protests and riots on worlds that had never questioned orders before. The ideological virus the Council feared most, the one that made species think freely, was spreading faster than light. Back on Earth, the Assembly reconvened in secret session. News feeds whispered of incoming fleets, of weapon signatures building near the quarantine line. Can we fight them all? A senator asked Kane. No, he said simply. But we don't need to. We just need to remind them what we are. Elaine crossed her arms. You mean monsters? Kane looked at her, eyes cold. No. We remind them we're the species that survived its own extinction, twice. The only monsters here are the ones who call mercy a disease. Outside, in the silent black around Neptune, the Terran defense network shimmered to life. Thousands of small lights aligned into a vast invisible lattice, the quarantine line bright and patient. 10,000 refugees slept safely beneath it, and humanity, for the first time in centuries, stood utterly alone and completely unafraid. The sky over the Indian Ocean burned red at dawn. Not with fire, but with dissent. Hundreds of ships, sleek, alien, and scarred from a war they had not chosen, breached through Earth's upper atmosphere in slow formation. They came like rain, streaking silver and gold trails that shimmered against the horizon. On the coasts, millions watched from rooftops, beaches, and harbors as the first true exodus of alien life arrived on human soil. In orbit, the United Earth Defense Fleet tracked every craft with locked precision, rail batteries primed, interceptors shadowing their descent. But the order was clear from the top: no hostile response unless provoked. Humanity had voted against extermination, and now it would prove that stance meant more than words. At Port Ellis Base, a sprawling landing site carved from the cliffs of Australia's western coast, soldiers in adaptive armor stood shoulder to shoulder in silent rank. Each bore the same symbol across their chest, a stylized earth cradled by an open hand. General Miriam Havers stood at the front, helmet off, her weathered face drawn tight with the weight of what was coming. She had been briefed. 10,417 registered refugees. 4 species. 3 days of atmospheric quarantine before contact. But statistics didn't prepare her for the shape of the first shuttle that touched down. It looked broken, more a relic than a ship. Its hull bore charred scars, its left thrusters flickering weakly as it settled into the landing field. The air shimmered with the heat of re-entry. Then the ramp lowered. A figure stepped out, tall, willowy, skin translucent as glass. Through it, veins of bioluminescent light pulsed faintly like a heartbeat. The alien raised both hands, trembling, as if uncertain whether it was about to be shot or welcomed. Behind it, smaller forms followed, children clutching what looked like glowing fragments of crystal or tech no human could name. Miriam exhaled softly. "Get the translators running," she ordered. "And somebody tell command, they're here." The first contact tent was a swirl of voices, scanning lights and careful gestures. The refugees barely spoke, their voices a blend of tones and frequencies that shimmered in the air. But when a translator drone finally calibrated, the first clear word came through the static. "Sanctuary." Miriam nodded. "You'll have it." Hours later, under a bruised twilight sky, she watched as medical drones tended to the wounded. One of the refugees, an old male with gray, fractal skin, reached out and took her hand. His fingers were cool, almost glass-like. "You were the only ones," he rasped through the translator. "All the others voted for our death." Miriam didn't pull away. "Then you came to the right planet," she said. In orbit, Earth's communications grid shimmered with transmissions. News feeds lit up across colonies and stations. Aliens land safely on Earth. The Galactic Council's silence was deafening. But in the black between stars, ships moved, silent, watching. The extermination fleets were not disbanded. They were only waiting. And deep in Earth's military command, contingency protocols began to hum, because humanity's act of mercy had just painted the largest target in the galaxy across their blue world. The message came through at 0300 UTC, a cold, sterile transmission across every major comms band. "Earth has violated Galactic Directive 88A. Harboring condemned species is an act of defiance against the Council. You have 72 standard hours to surrender all refugee vessels for extermination. Failure to comply will result in planetary enforcement measures. The feed ended. No negotiation. No debate. Just silence. Then, from the command deck of UN Orbital Bastion Valhalla, Admiral Ruiz leaned back in his chair and exhaled through his nose. Well, he muttered, they've finally decided to test the theory that we're bluffing. The Council's warships began to assemble beyond Luna orbit, a shimmering wall of color and power. Dozens of species, united in bureaucratic righteousness, their fleets converging like a storm. From the viewport of Valhalla, they looked almost serene. Beautiful even if you ignored what they meant. Captain Nia Chen, tactical officer, adjusted her display. Reading 214 vessels, Admiral. Dreadnought class and above. They're deploying interdiction fields. Ruiz didn't flinch. And Earth. Full planetary defense grid active. Sky Shield satellites online. Quantum mines in high orbit. And... She hesitated. Protocol Caliban is on standby. The Admiral nodded once, eyes reflecting the ghostly blue light of the tactical map. Then we're not negotiating. We're surviving. Down below, at Port Ellis, refugees watched the skies darken as orbital defense lines began to shimmer faintly against the atmosphere, a pale aurora stretching from horizon to horizon. Children of alien worlds pointed upward, whispering in their musical tongues. Miriam Havers stood beside the lead refugee, the willowy being of light. That glow, it murmured, is that your weapon? Shield, Miriam corrected softly. But it can burn if we need it to. Back in orbit, the first contact came, a transmission, not from the Council's political arm, but from their enforcement fleet. On the holoscreen appeared High Executor Thalvri, crystalline skin refracting prismatic light, voice sharp as glass. Humanity, you were warned. Mercy is not yours to grant. Deliver the fugitives or face cleansing. Ruiz leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Executor, let me make something perfectly clear. He motioned for the holofeed to zoom closer. His voice dropped to a level tone, not loud, not angry, but the kind that made silence heavier. You think mercy is weakness. You think compassion is naive. But on Earth, we learned mercy after fire. Compassion after war. You demand our surrender? We've already survived worse than your threats. So if you want our answer. He leaned back and gave a small, humorless smile. Come take them. The transmission cut. For several seconds, nothing. Then, the Council fleet began to move. Ruiz stood, straightening his coat. Signal all fleets. Defensive posture Alpha. And... He hesitated, just for a breath. Activate Caliban, safety's on. I want them to see what they've awakened. Moments later, a blinding flare rippled through the void. Behind Earth's moon, a vast structure unfolded, kilometer-wide rings spinning into alignment, pulsing with white light. The Caliban Array, Earth's classified deterrent, powered by captured singularity energy, came online for the first time. Sensors across the system screamed as gravity itself began to bend. The alien fleets halted instantly. Ruiz watched the feed, calm as a man watching a sunrise. Let's see, he murmured, if the Council remembers how to feel fear. Tone and theme. Humanity's resolve hardens. Mercy does not mean submission. The visual tone shifts from hopeful to awe-inspiring menace, beauty laced with power. Atmosphere. Looming fleets, shimmering orbital shields, rising tension before cosmic confrontation. Mood. Calm defiance, grim unity, and the quiet promise of consequences. The alien armada hung in orbit like a storm that had lost its thunder. Dozens of worlds worth of firepower, engines glowing, weapons systems spooling in eerie synchronization. Yet none dared cross the invisible perimeter surrounding Earth's defense grid. From orbital bastion Valhalla, Admiral Ruiz watched in silence. The Caliban Array spun behind the moon, its white light turning the dust-gray surface silver. Humanity had never meant to reveal it, not until today. Executor Thalvri is transmitting again, said Captain Chen. They're demanding proof that Caliban is not a doomsday weapon. Ruiz didn't look away from the viewport. Tell them we prefer demonstrations to explanations. Transmission log. Council Enforcement Command. 007 Unidentified gravitational anomaly detected. 012 Energy spike consistent with localized event horizon. 018 Visual feed disrupted. 019 Transmission terminated. On the surface, humanity watched the night sky come alive. To the naked eye, it looked like the stars were moving, streaks of silver-white light vanishing, one by one, as if someone were erasing them from the firmament. Port Ellis Base went silent. Refugees gathered outside their tents, gazing upward. A child of the crystalline species whispered, "They are gone." Miriam Havers stood beside him. "Not gone," she said softly. "Warned." Above, Ruiz watched the last fragments of the Council fleet drift into nothing. Caliban's singularity field had not detonated, merely folded. An entire enemy formation erased from spacetime, their matter unmade without a single missile fired. Chen broke the silence. "Admiral, we just erased the Council's enforcement arm in under 2 minutes." He nodded slowly. Then the message was received. Across the galaxy, panic rippled through the remaining Council worlds. The vote to exterminate the refugees was rescinded in less than an hour. By morning, Earth's diplomatic channels were flooded with transmission requests, apologies, treaties, proposals for new accords. Ruiz denied them all. He transmitted only one message to the Galactic Council's capital world. Mercy was offered once. Betray it again, and we'll teach the stars silence. Weeks later, the refugees began building settlements, not as guests but as equals. The alien child from before planted a shard of glowing crystal into the soil near the landing field. "Our home," he said through the translator. Miriam knelt beside him, hands pressed into the dirt. "No," she corrected gently. "Our home." In the orbital archives, historians would later mark the timestamp, 3:47 Universal Time Coordinated, when the Council's fleet vanished. The official report labeled it a diplomatic resolution by demonstration. But among the soldiers who stood watch that night, and the refugees who found shelter beneath human skies, the phrase that spread was simpler. Earth drew a line and the galaxy blinked. Tone and theme. Awe and finality. Humanity's quiet, disciplined wrath replaces fear with respect. Compassion was never weakness, it was power, restrained until provoked. Visual mood. Cold starlight over Earth's curved horizon, the ghostly glow of the Caliban array behind the moon, and the slow, silent disappearance of an armada across the void. Closing emotion. Triumphant serenity. Humanity as both protector and enforcer of conscience in a brutal galaxy.